All right. Well, let's get going. I'm sure some more people will pop in as we get into the discussion, but not to take up too much valuable time. First off, everybody, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's virtual pint night regarding the Ellis Integrated Vegetation Project. My name is Ian Isaacson. I'm the board co-chair for the Oregon chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And with us tonight is Lizzy Berkley from the Umatilla National Forest and the project lead for the Ellis project. And if, as we're going through the presentation, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I'd appreciate it if you put all questions in there. And the plan is to get through Lizzy's presentation, and then we'll go through questions at the end. If you do put a question into the chat box, I will try to capture that, but I can't guarantee it. So please put that into the Q&A. And without further ado, Lizzy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ian, and thank you for the invite. I love Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Just to begin with, personally, this is me personally talking. Great organization, so happy to be here to talk with you guys about the Ellis Integrated Vegetation Project tonight. I think I'm just going to give you a pretty solid overview of the project, so bear with me. This is kind of a long presentation. I'll try not to talk too much, but this is a big project of scope and scale, and so there's a lot to say with the project me as I take you through this. So I just wanted to check real quick, Ian, before I continue. Do you see the presentation slide?
We do, the front slide, we do.
Okay, and you can hear me okay? Correct. All right. Okay, so let's see. Oops. Wow, that's touchy. Okay. Okay, like I said, I'm going to just give you an overview of the project and then the proposed alternatives that you will see in the draft environmental impact statement. So the draft EIS was recently released, hot off the press as of last Friday. I'll take you through kind of like the timeline and next steps, how to comment if you're interested in commenting on this project, and then take any questions at the end of the presentation. But like Ian said, if you think you might forget, go ahead and use that chat function, and I'll try to catch up with you at the end there. Okay, so the Ellis project is on the Umatilla National Forest in northeastern Oregon. And Ian, can you see my little mouse when I point to things? Yes. Okay. Great. So this is the project area right here, and it spans, it takes up a portion of two ranger districts, the Hefner Ranger District and the North Fork John Day Ranger District. It's within three counties, primarily within Morrow County. So here are the county lines. And this is the portion of the project area in Morrow County, and then Umatilla County is over here. And then the project area dips down a little bit into Grant County down here. It's a large project. It's approximately 110,000 acres of national forest lands. And within the Ellis project boundary, there are actually some private land in holdings that account for about just over 4,000 acres. So within this giant project area, there's a lot of different habitat types, including dry, cold, and moist upland forests. And some of those special habitat types, shrub, steppe, meadows, and aspen. So back in 2018 is when we initiated this project through the scoping period. And the project's overall goal really is to restore the area into a healthy ecosystem and a resilient landscape. Okay, so the purpose of the Ellis project is fivefold. Like I said, this is kind of a kitchen sink project, a lot going on. We want to do a lot with this project, a lot of good things. And of course, when we implement projects like this, there's also a lot of byproducts and benefits to the community. And I'm just gonna take you through in more detail each of these purpose statements of the Ellis project. But just as an overview, the first one is increased forest health and vigor. And enhancing unique plant communities. So that's the shrub steppe, dry and wet meadows, and aspen. Improving wildlife habitat, and this project does focus on elk, so we'll get more into that. I know you guys will be interested in that. And protecting values at risk and public and firefighter safety. And then the forest user experience is important to us too. We want to provide multiple uses on the forest, and we want them to be quality, right? So we want to enhance public and traditional land uses through those vegetation management and habitat improvements that we're proposing to do with this project. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to take you into detail in each of these purpose statements of the project. And the first one is focusing on that forest health and vigor. And improving that. Really what this has to do with focusing on the existing conditions, what we're seeing out there today in the forested areas. And so across the project area, the forest is vulnerable to disturbances, and historic range and historic range of variability analysis was conducted, which demonstrated that stand density and structure and composition are not within the range of variability that it was historically. So pre-settlement, pre-fire suppression. And when the stand conditions are like that, like I said, it's vulnerable to disturbances. And what do I mean by that? We're seeing more insect and disease outbreaks at more frequently. So, and also in bigger in scale as well. And then of course, the wildfire situation, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We're seeing uncharacteristically high severity wildfire more often and at a bigger scale than what used to be out there. And so to get these stands in a healthier condition, that's one of the main purposes of this project. And I'm just going to kind of take you through this real quick here. So we have the three forest types: dry, upland forest, moist, and cold. And then you can see across here each density class. So low, moderate, and high. And these are ranges that are expressed in the percent of a landscape that was in these different density classes. And in this case, this is the Ellis project area. So in these existing conditions, the percent of the landscape is actually the Ellis project area. And when we did the analysis, we found that, I'm going to focus on this high density class area, that many of our stands are way out of whack compared to what they should have been historically. And you can see how high, so 81% of the dry forest types in the Ellis project area is in a high density class, where historically it was 5 to 15%. And these histograms are just another way of graphically showing that departure. So this is the moist upland forest type, and this blue dot is existing conditions, like what is there today. And that orange bar right here is the percent range of variation. So this is where we want to be, and this is where the blue dot is where we're at today. And so you can see things are just all out of whack out there in moist forest, dry forest, and I didn't have room for cold in here, but cold is also not within the range of variation as well. And then the map is just, again, another way of showing how much high density stands we have out there. So historically, you would see a lot more green and yellow and less pink. And now we have a lot of pink, a lot of high dense stands. Similarly, the structure of the forest is outside the range of variation as well. And again, this should look pretty familiar from the last one. So the 3 upland forest types. And then these are different stand structures that they're silviculturist terms, right? So we have stand initiation, stem exclusion, understory reinitiation, and 2 different types of old forest. So old forest multistratum, so you have different layers of trees, and old forest single stratum. And I'm just going to jump over here to the histogram because it's just much better visually than the table, but so same numbers. So again, the blue dot is existing conditions, what we have today. And then the green bar is the range of variability that what was there historically. And I should back up a little bit on that. So the historic range of variability provides us a really good reference of what the landscape looked like when fire was part of the ecosystem. And we use that reference to kind of help gauge where we want to move back to. But now with climate change and whatnot, we try to weigh in some of those variables. So we try to think about, yes, historic range of variability is our benchmark, our reference condition. And then what else can we do to think about the future range of variability? So you might hear that in some other presentations as well. So again, the blue dot existing conditions is outside of the range in each of these structure classes, except for the old forest multistratum is at the top range of the range of variability there. But you can kind of gauge, we're just a little bit out of whack out there in terms of where the forest stand should be compared to that reference condition. So this is an example of an old photo from 1935 compared to a photo that was taken in 2019 of the same area. It's it's in the northwest corner of the project area in Arbuckle Mountain, near Arbuckle Mountain or Bald Mountain. And you can, there are just really notable changes in stand density and overall heterogeneity. And when I say heterogeneity, I just mean diversity, right? So that there's just notable changes in structure and density and just the diversity of the landscape out there. So you can see like this meadow here is quite a bit more open in 1935. And that's because fires were part of that ecosystem at the time. And you can see back here, there's an opening and some back here, and there's some different structure and composition out there. And now it's pretty closed in, right? There's not that variability out there. It's more homogeneous. It's more the same, it looks like. And so when we manage for both resilient landscapes, like we're trying to do with the Ellis project, and also a wide range of wildlife species and their habitat types, having this heterogeneous condition overall at multiple scales, so at a landscape scale and also at a stand level, is really important to manage wildlife and also achieve resiliency and be able to get fire back on the landscape. Okay, so like I've mentioned, there's several unique plant communities out there as well, including aspen, wet and dry meadows, and shrub steppe habitats. And these are just really cool habitats. They also provide diversity for plants and animals, and it's great to have pockets of these out on the landscape and take care of them. So what's happened is through the decades of fire suppression, conifers have been encroaching into these habitat communities or these plant communities. And in addition to that, hydrologic function in some of our wet meadows are not intact either. So that's another purpose and need of this project as well that we'd like to focus on. Okay, so that was a lot, and maybe you guys are like, you know, drinking your beers now and like, wow, this is a lot of forest talk. So now we're going to get a little bit more into elk and wildlife. First, let's talk about wildlife, because this improving habitat for wildlife definitely needs to happen in this project area. Like I've been saying, having that homogeneous landscape out there and not a lot of diversity. Habitat is just really not well distributed or diverse in this project area. And that's something we do want to focus on, because when you do increase the diversity of the vegetation, you provide for a suite of wildlife species, including species that like less trees, so open canopy species, species that like just a single layer of trees versus multiple layers of trees, and species that like multi-layered forests. And then we also want to maintain some thicker areas, right, for hiding cover. And for species like marten, they like closed canopy, and they're critters that, you know, depend on a wide range of habitat and a wide range of vegetative conditions. So we want that mix. That's the goal. Okay, so that's wildlife. And now I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper into elk. So during the development of this project, it was really evident from the local community and partners and different organizations like yourselves, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the states, the tribes, and the adjacent landowners in the Gurdane area, just north of the Ellis project area, that improving elk distribution should really be one of the goals of this project. And so through that initial development of the project and through scoping, it really became evident that we needed to focus on elk for this project. Generally speaking, the elk forage quality in this area is poor to moderate, and security is limited. So what do I mean by security? You guys may have heard of that term. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. So security is defined as an area that is at least 250 acres in size and more than a half mile from an open motorized route. So basically areas with less motorized use. Backcountry. So that's a pretty black and white definition. And as we all know, being hunters, that elk, there are a lot of variables that influence the way elk use the landscape and move around. So we kind of hang our hat on this definition because there are more than 30 studies over 40 years that have consistently shown that elk avoid roads open to motorized uses on public lands. It's profound evidence in a lot of studies. So the Ellis Project area has a lot of roads. We have a lot of open motorized routes in that project area. There are about 340 miles of open roads in the project area right now. And by strategically storing roads for future use or closing them, or placing seasonal restrictions on some of those roads, including hunting season, it will provide areas that motorized disturbance is minimized. So what we're seeing over the last 20 or 30 years, elk are spending more time on private lands. And this starts happening. They kind of start piling off the forest and into the private lands north of the Ellis project area in the fall. And they are tending to stay on there longer into the spring too. So there's damage to agricultural lands, and they're not on the forest often during hunting season because they start kind of piling off around archery season and really piling off during gun season. So that's why our proposed seasonal closures would include the hunting season dates. Then if you add that vegetation management, what we're proposing to do to thin the forest and do prescribed burns in this project, if you add that thinning treatment, the forest thinning and prescribed fire, along with the road management, it will help encourage elk to use those public lands and come off the private, use the public lands, and improving that forage by thinning the forest elk like eating tasty snacks and feeling comfortable eating those tasty snacks. So that's the goal there, is coupling the vegetation management with road management. So I do want to mention also that, because this has been a concern with folks that are not as comfortable closing roads because they want that access, the roads will be taken away for forest management and fire suppression. And I just want to mention that the roads proposed for motorized use adjustment will continue to be available for forest management activities, wildfire suppression, and I think there's only 13 miles at the most that are proposed for decommissioning, and that's to improve fish habitat. So I just wanted to mention that because that's definitely one of the things that folks are concerned about. Okay, so I'm going to dig even a little deeper into the elk story here and provide a success story of a project that did something similar with coupling that vegetation management and road management. And it is on our neighboring forest on the Wallowa Whitman. And this project is called Dry Beaver Lad Canyon. And they emphasized thinning treatments. So over here on the right, you'll see these little green blobs, these polygons are stands that were thinned. And they coupled those thinning treatments with these road closures. So all the dark red squiggly lines are roads that they closed. And you can kind of see what the prescription looked like. So the before picture is over here, and then this area would not provide high quality forage for elk, but after the thinning treatment, that opens up the canopy and lets that forage grow. And again, tasty snacks for elk. And if you close roads, then they feel comfortable eating those snacks. And that's a good thing. So when they implemented this treatment, there were radio collared elk in this area. And what they started seeing was a shift of use from the radio collared elk that were using the private lands to the north here and they shifted their use back to the national forest lands during spring, summer, and fall. So that was a pretty good success story. And there's still improvements going on in this area on the Wallowa Whitman. So it's pretty great. So the benefit, and the reason why I say it's great, you know, there's a lot of benefits, including for other wildlife species when you do road management and vegetation management. Roads are not only impactful to or have effects on elk, but a lot of other species as well. And then, of course, the noticeable benefits for you guys is having access to those elk, right? Because if they're on the private lands, they're not on the public lands to have the opportunity to hunt them. So that's good for both public hunters and public land hunters and tribal members as well. And if the private lands are experiencing agricultural damage, it minimizes agricultural damage too. So it's a win-win-win-win situation. Okay, bear with me here. We're switching gears away from wildlife and elk and to the other purpose and needs of this project. So because of the existing conditions that I described earlier, when I was talking about the forest health stuff, the forest is just really, it's not resilient and is vulnerable to that uncharacteristically high severity wildfires, which unfortunately, and as we all know, puts people's lives and infrastructure and other values, including habitat, at risk. But fire is a natural part of this ecosystem, right? And you know, the conditions just do not allow for the effective wildfire response. And when a wildfire does occur, firefighters, you know, and the public are at risk as well. And currently, there's not a lot of fuel breaks available, or ingress and egress routes are really non-existent. So back to, you know, fire is part of this ecosystem, and it would be great to have a day where the Umatilla could benefit from, and there are some wildfires that definitely benefit now, but in this project area, because we're so out of whack, it would be a stand replacing fire, and it would be really difficult for firefighters to catch it. So we would just like to see a day where, you know, if a wildfire does happen, that it would be beneficial to the land and wildlife, and also in a manageable way that doesn't put people's lives and values at risk. So that is another purpose of the project, is to try to protect those values, and the firefighters and folks that have cabins in the area, and the public when they're out there recreating as well. So, okay, the last purpose and need of the project is the forest user experience. So we want to provide a variety of opportunities for forest users, and also fulfill our treaty obligations to the tribes. We are working closely with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation to monitor the impacts of the forest management treatments that we're proposing to do on first foods like huckleberries and some other plant species. So we're working with them on that. There is also a need to improve and maintain recreational values out there. We have several campgrounds, and one of the needs is to thin around the campgrounds. We don't want to lose that in a wildfire either. And then the scenic byway, so Highway 53, otherwise known as the Western Route. There are some areas where if we thinned out some spots in the forest, you would get a scenic overlook. So that's one of the proposed treatments as well. And of course, providing forest products and supporting local communities is something that is usually a byproduct of these vegetation management projects. Okay, so, whew, that's a lot. I need some water. Get your beers. Have a drink. Okay, so that's a lot of goals, a big project, big scope. And because there are a lot of goals, we have a lot of proposed treatments too. So we are proposing the usual thinning treatments, medium and large diameter thinning treatments. Alternative 5, one of our action alternatives, we're proposing to use the new 21-inch tree amendment that allows us to cut trees that are 21 inches or bigger, live trees, that is, in certain situations. We're going to be focusing mostly on grand fir trees and Doug fir trees that are over 21 inches in the dry forest type, mostly. Small diameter thinning, mechanical fields treatments, pile and jackpot burning, landscape burning, pruning, and pruning would be just within like a quarter of a mile by a value at risk. So if there's a cabin or something like that, we would prune up trees in that quarter mile of value at risk. Planting of native vegetation, so seeding and shrubs, placement of large wood in meadow streams, so that would help improve the hydrologic function of streams. And then the road closures, seasonal and year-long, and that's again proposed to improve elk distribution and get them back to public lands, hopefully. Okay, so back in 2018, during the scoping period, we received hundreds and hundreds of comments from the public about this project when we first scoped. And out of those, out of the scoping and comments, there were several key issues that came up during that time. And these key issues are really integral during the planning process of a project. So we use these key issues that were brought up by the public to develop the wide range of action alternatives that we have in the Ellis project. And each of these alternatives meets those purpose and needs that I just described in pretty good detail to varying degrees, and addresses one or more of these key issues that we heard from the public. So the key issues are the scope and scale of the project, treatments in old forest structure and moist and cold forest types, whether or not the project would effectively improve elk distribution and habitat, impacts of road closures to recreation and forest management, impacts to undeveloped lands, impacts of temporary roads on soils and aquatic resources, and then impacts to the scenic byway. Okay, so here are the Ellis alternatives that you'll see in the draft EIS. So alternative 1 is no action. We do nothing, which would be sad because there was a lot of work put into this. Alternative 2, well, I'll just say that, so each of these alternatives has a theme associated with it, like a general theme. And so alternative 2, the theme is emphasis on forest health and resilience, improving elk distribution, protecting values at risk and firefighter safety, and providing forest products to support local communities. And alternative 3, there's emphasis on dry forest treatments and preserving old forest structure. So we wouldn't have treatments in moist and cold forest types, and we would not have treatments or mechanical treatments in old forest structure stands. Alternative 4 is an emphasis on fields and wildlife with treatments focusing within 1.5 miles of values at risk, which is that ember reduction zone. It's basically a buffer created in GIS that's 1.5 miles from a value at risk. And treatments would also be in those elk security areas that would be created from closing roads. So areas where motorized use is limited. And then alternative 5 is pretty much exactly the same as alternative 2, but like I mentioned before, alternative 5, we would be able to use that 21-inch tree amendment where we could cut trees that are 21 inches or greater. And then alternative 5 also has a few more seasonal closures for elk security. So alternative 5, I would say, would be the best for elk. Okay, so here is a glimpse of treatment scale and location kind of across the project area. I know this is probably hard for you guys to read or see any of these things, but I just wanted to give you guys a visual of each of the alternatives in terms of, you can kind of get a sense of where we're treating and the difference between alternatives by just kind of comparing all 3 of them together. So you can see that for vegetation management, alternative 2 and 5, we're proposing a lot of treatments in the Ellis project area. It's a good chunk. So the blue is small diameter thinning, and then the hash marks are that medium to large diameter thinning. And then there's orange, which is just thinning by with chainsaws. And then the purple are stands that were identified as wildlife connectivity, which is a forest plan standard that we have. And so treatments in the wildlife connectivity areas would be a light-handed treatment or no treatment, depending on what the stand looks like, because it has to still meet that forest plan standard for connectivity. So you can kind of see for alternative 4, it's only focused on the ember reduction zone. You can kind of even see the buffer of where the values at risk are. So private land, cabins and whatnot that are interspersed throughout the project area. And then elk security areas would also be treated. So areas that were developed by closing roads would also be treated in that alternative. And then alternative 3 is kind of the lesser alternative for all the things. So less road management, less thinning. The focus is on dry forest, mostly dry forest treatment. So then here's our maps for fire and fuels management. That orangish tannish color is that ember reduction zone, 1.5 miles from the values at risk. And then the blue squiggly lines are basically fuel breaks that are proposed along roads, strategic roads for the wildfire suppression activities and ingress and egress routes, and just managing the wildfires if they occur. That's the purpose of the fire and fuels maps, or the fire and fuels treatments rather. And again, you can kind of see that there are a lot of field breaks proposed for alternatives 2 and 5, and less so for 4, and even less so for 3. The field breaks vary in size as well. So you'll see the light, thicker blue. Those are 500-foot field break buffers. So it's 500 feet on either side of the road that would be treated. And then the darker blue that's thinner, like in alternative 4 and alternative 3, Those are 300-foot field breaks, so 300 foot on either side. And it's not, I do want to emphasize that the field breaks are not like clear cuts. They'll be designed in a way where there's clumps of trees that are left and they'll be feathered. So the closer you are to the road, it'll be a heavier treatment, but as you get further from the road, it'll be less. So it won't be like clear cut all the way through. It'll be a feathered approach. And then if a field break meets up with a connectivity stand, then it'll be skipped. So it will look okay. Okay. So here are our maps for the big game enhancement to improve elk distribution. Obviously, other species benefit too. So alternative 5, this is our maximum alternative for not only vegetation treatment, but also road closures. So you can see all the squiggly lines in here are roads, and the proposals are the dashes. So the seasonal closures are like the white and blue dash lines, and then the year-long closures are the red and white dash lines. And you can see that the seasonal closures plus the year-long closures overlap with these big purple areas. So the light purple is the existing security that we have today, which is only 11% across the whole project area is in a secure condition. Again, at least 250 acres in size and at least a half mile from an open motorized route. And then our proposals the proposed treatments create the darker purple security. So you can see that alternative 5 adds a lot of non-motorized areas for elk. And alternative 2 is the next one that proposes quite a bit of road management to get at that elk distribution improvements. And then, wow, that's profound. So there's 5 and 2, and then I click off of that and you can see how less alternative 4 and alternative 3 is. So the only places that we're really adding security is just south of that private land piece that's having the problems, and up in the northern part of the project areas where we would create security. And then over here to the east of the project area, and then really just only that northern spot in alternative 3 are some seasonal closures there. Okay, we're almost done, you guys, and then you can start bombarding me with questions here. So here's just another table comparing the different alternatives, so you can really get a sense for the alternatives compared to each other based on key issue. I don't have all of the key issues up here, but I have the big ones up here. So you can kind of check it out. And I'm not going to go through all of this again, but you can see the theme of each alternative. And then, yep, cutting 21-inch or bigger trees, that's an issue. The field breaks, some folks were concerned about the field breaks and what those would look like. And you can kind of compare the difference between alternatives with the field breaks. And then road management. You can see from this table that 72% of the open road network that we have today, so if 100% is today, we would still retain 72% of the open road network in alternative 2. So there's still going to be a lot of open roads in the project area if alternative 2 is chosen. And we would increase elk security by 16%. So the total project area would be at 27% in that secure condition. and so on and so forth. So alternative 3, 96% of the open road network, so very minimal changes to the road network for alternative 3. Just only increasing elk security by 4%. And you guys can see the rest. But again, oops, whoa. Okay. Alternative 5 is 32% of the area of the Ellis project area is in elk security in secure conditions. So again, alternative 5 is probably the best for improving elk distribution and getting those guys back to public lands. Although it will take some time, I'm sure, and the private landowners and ODF&W and us, I mean, there's a lot of different players here to get all of this to work. So hopefully we find that solution. But this project is proposing to do the piece that the Forest Service is responsible for. So we'll see what happens. Okay, wow. We made it through most of the project now, and I'm just going to kind of summarize the overall benefits and the desired outcomes that we want to see with the Ellis project. Again, there's just a lot of goals we hope to achieve with this project, and the aim here is really to balance the need to restore ecosystem resilience with serving the needs of our communities and forest users and the different types of users as well. We really would like to set up the landscape to receive beneficial wildfire and promote safety of the public and firefighters if a wildfire does occur. Enhance unique plant communities like the aspen and meadows and shrub steppe. Provide well-distributed high-quality wildlife habitat and improving elk distribution and contributing to social, cultural, and economic needs of the community. So those are our desired outcomes. Okay, so the draft EIS was released on March 4th, last Friday. Woohoo, fireworks. The comment period lasts 45 days. So if you guys are interested in commenting, the comment period ends on April 18th. And then after April 18th, we will have received probably hundreds and hundreds of comments, and it will take us a while to go through those. So we review all those comments and we adjust the EIS based on those comments or errors that are found. And then the ranger, Doug McKay, at the Heppner Ranger District, he's the signing official of this project. He will come up with a preferred alternative. He'll choose one of the alternatives that I just walked you through. Or a combination of alternatives. You can choose, he can choose, say he chose alternative 2, for example, but he likes something from alternative 5 better. And so he can kind of choose things if he wanted to. So a preferred alternative will be chosen, and it could be a preferred alternative with modification. And then a final EIS will be released with a draft record of decision. And then there will be an objection period that will last 45 days. And then we have 75 days to respond to any objections that we get. And then hopefully all will be well and it'll be finalized and signed, and we can get the good work done in that area that we want to. And I'm thinking that it will take about 10 years to implement the project because it is so large. So it will be a while. Okay. So how to get involved if you're interested in getting involved. So like I said, the draft EIS has been released. We are now in the comment period, and the comment period ends on April 18th. So, if you guys are interested in letting us know what you think and you want to comment on the project, you can go to the project website. And in the right-hand corner, well, I wonder, Ian, should I try to go in to show folks how this works?
You can try. I put the project website link in the chat, so some folks might have already clicked on that.
Perfect. Okay, I won't bother then. I'll wrap it up so we can get to questions and answers. Yep, so you click on the project website, and then on the right-hand corner, there's another link that you can click that says comment on project, and it'll bring up a thing where a form where you plug in your name, and then you can attach documents and whatnot. So yeah, tell us what you think about the project. Hopefully the presentation today helped you guys out in terms of understanding the project. The draft EIS is about 150 pages, so it's pretty long. There's also some good material on the project website, which I'll get to here in a second. But I do want to mention too that once the document is signed, that gives us the permission to go do the work, and we could possibly use help with implementing the project too. There are things that volunteers can do, like helping us do habitat monitoring, put up road signs and kind of check those road signs to see if they're still up. You know, some people shoot road signs, and you know, it's kind of hard to maintain them, but yeah, so there's just things that you guys could do to help us out. You know, we're probably going to build aspen fences, do some shrub planting, maybe put out some native seed out there. And then I think I put helping inform others here, because I think there's going to be quite a big change out there depending on the decision with this project, especially with road management. And if you guys hunt in this area and you see people that are going down a new closed road, or a road that's already closed, you know, and just it's kind of that self-policing situations. If you are like, hey, did you guys know this road is closed? And you know, there's an MVUM, a motorized vehicle use map, and you can use Avenza to check it out and know where you're at, and just kind of like helping inform people, and then discussing like, oh yeah, this road was closed, so hopefully elk will come use this area more. I just think that will be really valuable. You know, we don't have a lot of law enforcement folks out there to help enforce the road management decisions we've made. So just kind of that self-policing and helping us get the word out is really going to be helpful, I think. So if you guys are looking for more information, or you know, the slides that I went through today, I don't think I have the PowerPoint up on the project website, but what is there is a link to our story map, which has all the information that I described today. And it's really cool. It's an interactive map. I know Ian likes it. You can go in and click on layers that you're interested in. So if you're interested in seeing the forest thinning treatments for each of the alternatives, you can kind of click on those. You can zoom in and look at the roads that we're proposing to close more specifically, or ones that we have seasonal closures on, etc. So it's really cool. I encourage you guys to go check out the story map. That could help you as you go through the draft EIS as well. And we have some other information and tools out there to help you guys out. And you can always contact us if you have any questions or you want to chat more about the project. We're here and available for you. And that is all I have, Ian. We made it.
We made it. All right.
I talked a lot.
Well, thank you, Lizzy. We're just going to hop right into questions. I got different questions popping up everywhere. So the first question is, what is the process for incorporating versus choosing not to incorporate particular public comments in the preferred alternative?
Oh, wow. That is a good question. I don't know if we have a solid process in terms of determining. I mean, all comments are like, if we receive comments, they're valid comments, but it is difficult sometimes when they're vague or they're not specific. And so I encourage folks, if they decide to comment, to have something that is specific enough that it could influence a decision. So like, saying like which alternative or pieces alternative you like and why, and or even digging in like, that's why that story map is going to be so handy, because you can zoom in, you can be like, commenting specifically on areas that are meaningful to you. So I think comments that have something substantial that can change a direction or not is helpful. But in terms of a process specifically, we're going to go through all of the comments regardless of the comments and take a look at them. And then it's really up to, let me pause there for a second. The team there could be comments saying like, hey, you didn't analyze this fully, or something's missing here that should be here. Did you consider this? And sometimes the team will go back in and look at that and look to see what we did put in there. And maybe we need to adjust. Maybe we do need to analyze something more. So sometimes the public points out flaws that we've missed, and that happens. This is a draft. And in addition to that, the draft environmental impact statement is not the full meal deal. So it is made of sections of people's reports. So for example, the fish biologist has like a 50-page report that analyzes fish and fish habitat, and only sections get into the draft EIS. So all those reports, all the specialist reports, are also available to the public and will be published as well on the project record. If they're not already, they will be soon. And so some of the detail is in there. Okay, and then it is really up to the ranger, the deciding official, on which comments will modify the decision or have an effect on the decision. It's really up to them. I hope that answered your question, and I hope that was helpful. I'm going to try to get the chat up here.
Yeah, there's one other question in the chat, but I'm going to hop over. We got 2 questions in the Q&A box. So again, just to reiterate, if everybody wasn't here at the beginning, if you could put your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat, that just helps us organize and make sure we don't miss anybody's question. So, but if you put it in the chat box, I'm taking a mental note so we don't forget something. Okay, so the next question we got, Lizzy, is does the percentage of remaining roads include the roads in seasonal closures?
It does. It is both roads that are open year long and also the seasonal roads. We view the seasonal roads as open because they are open part of the year. So that's a really good question.
Okay. All right, I'm going to hop over here. Do you have a let's see here. Do you have a sense of the proportion of trees in the project area that are under and over 21 inches? For example, what would be the practical difference on the ground between alternate 2 and alternate 5 as it relates to the 21-inch diameter limit?
Yeah, so there are way more smaller diameter trees out in that landscape than there are big trees. With that said, there are a lot of big trees too, but our focus is really on cutting trees greater than 21 inches in certain circumstances where it will benefit that stand. So if you had a grand fir, a big grand fir that was over 21 inches next to a big ponderosa pine tree in a dry forest setting, that's really close to that ponderosa pine, that grand fir is taking the resources needed for that ponderosa pine to persist potentially. So those are the situations we're going to be specific about when to use that 21-inch tree or not. So in terms of like the impacts, like on the ground impact between alternative 2 and 5, there will be some, because we do plan, if alternative 5 is chosen, we do plan on taking some of those trees over 21 inches in certain circumstances where it will benefit that stand. So in terms of what other impacts are you interested in? I don't know. I wish I could see people's names. I don't know if that answered their question or not.
That was Doug asked that question. Well, we'll let, if Doug has a follow-up,
Okay.
you can obviously type it in, but we'll just keep ripping on these.
Okay.
Okay, and all right, next question. And can you see the Q&A questions, Lizzy, or?
Yeah, are you on the Q&A now?
Yeah, yep.
From Roy?
Yeah.
On the mail here? I know, Roy.
So you can go
Hi,
to Logan is next.
Logan, okay.
Yep.
So, okay, is there any evidence that the half mile from a open road is effective at increasing elk security and is a major improvement of habitats? Half mile from an open road is effective at increasing elk security, or should we be trying for more space than that? Yeah, so yes, it needs to be over a half mile and also greater than 250 acres in size. This definition, well, it's supported by a lot of research, but the specific definition comes from a workshop of elk biologist in Montana in the 1990s, and they determined the half mile, 250 acres in size, and then at least 30% of the landscape needing to be in that secure condition, which is why alternative 5 was bumped up to 32%, because it takes us over that minimum threshold of 30% that's recommended by the professionals, subject matter experts. And there is a lot of evidence that the more than half mile increases security, not just from that workshop and that research in Montana, but also from research at Starkey. So I think earlier on the elk slide, I mentioned that there are over 30 studies in 40 years that describe motorized effects to elk. And they looked at specifically at the distance between those open motorized routes and where elk went and stopped. And yeah, there's a lot of supporting evidence with that. including that Dry Beaver Lad Canyon project that I mentioned as a success story.
All right.
Okay. Should I just keep going down in
Yeah,
the Q&A?
just continue to read out each question because I don't think everyone can see those questions.
Okay, so Roy asked, how large will the thinning units be? And will there be leaf patches large enough to hold elk adjacent to units and within large treatment blocks? Continuous treatment blocks are unlikely to benefit elk without some forest mosaic. Absolutely, Roy. We definitely are going for the mosaic. I love that term mosaic. I should have used it. Yes, that is the mix or the heterogeneity that we're after, is to provide clumps and leaf patches and skips and also openings to increase the forage. But yeah, in the security areas and then across the whole project, our aim is to really have a good mosaic. Whoa, and then I just lost a question in the Q&A. Does that happen?
I answered Ken's question in the chat. Yep.
Sweet.
Okay, it's semi under control, I think.
Okay.
Okay. I have another question here, Lizzy. What measures does the forest take when you close a road, either administratively or seasonally? What sort of treatments are done, and how are those closures enforced, and how can we as public land users help with that effort?
Good question. Yeah, okay. So we have had a travel management plan for a long time. And as you guys know, we have the motorized vehicle use maps, and it's not just in this project area, but we already have a lot of closed roads on the forest. And then Ellis, the year-long closures will be adding, for year-long closures, we kind of evaluate the road itself and the need. So we'll look at implementing a gate, but oftentimes gates are not effective because people just drive around them if it's in like a flat ground and doesn't have a lot of trees. So we'll kind of look at the situation there to see if a gate would help. A gate is also useful if it is a good situation to put a gate up for using that road in the future for fire suppression or forest management activities in the future. So gates are always nice for that reason, but they're also kind of expensive. So we don't use it everywhere. And like I said, not everywhere we can put a gate that's effective. Boulders are an option. We've used boulders before. Sometimes what we'll do is kind of erase the first part of the road. We'll scarify the soil and kind of decommission that first few hundred feet. We don't do that a lot, but I'd like to see us do that a little bit more to kind of get rid of that first part of the road bed, because it kind of disguises like this isn't a road anymore. So there's different treatment types we could do. Signs, I think signs are going to be huge, and I really want to go through like a whole sign overhaul on this forest to mark the roads so folks know where they're at when they're looking at the MVMs, because man, it's hard if you don't have a Venza. And then road closure signs. If it's a seasonal closure, obviously the gates are more desired, so you can just open up the gate. We'll probably need help with that too, is opening gates seasonally. So that would be really helpful, and placing signs out there. But as you guys know, that even though we have roads that are closed out on the forest, it's hard to maintain all the signs. Some of them are pretty bad or have been stolen or shot or whatever. And so having a good handle on signs and just monitoring what the needs are is definitely something that we don't have capacity for, and that there's definitely room for improvements there. Law enforcement, we only have 3 LEOs, I think, for the Blue Mountains. So it's really hard to cover all that ground. And so, like I said, at the end of the presentation, the self-policing. So just, it'd be great to be at a time where, you know, the public helps us out by just helping us inform others, other members of the public when you're out there and you see folks going down a closed road or about to go down a closed road or coming out from on a closed road, and just be like, hey, this road is closed. And a lot of it is for, you know, trying to keep elk on the forest or whatever reason it is. It doesn't really matter, but this road's closed. And yeah, it's definitely a challenge that we're having, is even maintaining the closures that we do have. And now with this Ellis project, I mean, there's a lot of roads that we're proposing seasonal closures on or year-long closures on. And we'll be working with ODF&W and others to help get ideas on how to best effectively do that. But that's definitely a concern of some, is like, we're implementing these closures on paper with this project, but in terms of effective closures on the ground is something that the Forest Service really struggles with. And so, yeah, if you guys have any ideas on that, that would be helpful too. Hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, and Ken brings up the same point that, you know, how spread thin LEOs are on the forest statewide and all over in every national forest, really. But, you know, that brings up a good point of BHA does have a illegal motorized tip program, and I believe it's on the, I haven't looked in a while, but it's on the website somewhere. But there's, you know, documentation that can happen if, you know, someone is convicted of illegal motorized use. So that is something that I know has been used in the past, and you know, we should probably do a better job of promoting, kind of like the TIP program with OHA and ODF&W. So
yeah, for sure. And hi, Ken, how are you?
Okay, I got one other question here.
Yeah.
Is there a buffer around stream or waterways when there's mechanical thinning prescribed? And if there is, what is that buffer?
Oh, it depends on what kind of class of stream it is. But yes, we are following, well, we have forest plan standards that we have to follow. And we also have a programmatic consultation with the services to protect listed fish and critical habitat. And the buffer, I'm pretty sure it's either 100 feet or 300 feet, depending on the type of stream. And yes, we are definitely implementing riparian buffers. With that said, Alternative 2 and Alternative 5, we are proposing to do site-specific consultation with the services for listed fish if we have to, but we are proposing to do some work within the riparian area that might be closer to streams in cases where an aspen stand is in riparian, which most of our aspen stands are riparian around, but we have around those aspen stands, but we do have project design criteria for minimizing impact in those aspen stands if we were to go into the riparian area with mechanical equipment, and also the wet meadows as well. So the answer to your question is yes, we're applying buffers. They're consistent with the forest plan standards that we have and consistent with the consultation that we have with the services already.
Great. And earlier you had mentioned, you know, talking about future fencing projects. I'm assuming that's more the buck and pole fencing around aspen stands, I would assume. I have not admittedly read through the entire DEIS yet, so forgive me if this is in there. But are there any treatments for replacing existing barbed wire fencing on the project area with wildlife friendly fencing?
That would be super great, wouldn't it be? No, fencing is part of the range management stuff, and we decided not to put any range management in the Ellis project because it was already so big. And so we will address any like range fencing in range NEPA when that's due. I always, as a side note, I always encourage anytime we replace a fence, I'm always pushing for the wildlife friendly fence specs, and I'm always sending those wildlife friendly specs to my range folks on this forest.
Is there a way to just make that the standard, and how do we do that moving forward? I'm sure there's bales and bales of barbed wire laying behind Forest Service shops all over the West, but how does that standard get updated?
Oh man, that's a good question too. Maybe through this process, when we do forest plan revision or the range NEPA, standards are usually associated with forest plan or policy. And so it would either be higher level, or when we go through the forest plan revision, that could be something. And the forest plan revision goes through the same process as this project. So yeah, there will be scoping and public comments after the draft release of the forest plan. And I think that would be a really good place to start. But yeah, I agree. I think like I said, I push for it all the time, and I don't know why it's not a standard either, but.
Well, I can tell you, Oregon BHA and a bunch of other hunting and conservation partner groups are anxiously waiting for the release of the forest plan revision. So it's on our list of topics to cover.
Definitely.
All right, we got another question from Roy.
Is it possible to convert some of the roads to horse trail, bicycle trails? Also, are mountain bicycles legal on the closed roads? So yeah, I think that's possible. I don't think we would do it under the Ellis project, but I would say that all of those closed roads people could ride horses or bicycles, or not what are those? The e-bikes. The e-bikes are considered motorized. So not those, but yeah, bicycles and horses, totally legal on those closed roads.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any last second questions? We got 10 minutes left technically, but
I love this comment in the chat. I don't even know what question it was for, but it was like, ooh, good question.
I see Ken here says the Oregon Wildlife Foundation has a neat new wildlife friendly fencing brochure available on their website.
Ooh, I'll check that out.
Produced by Pam. Perfect.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll check that out. Thanks, Ken.
All right. Any last questions? Any takers? Okay. Well, Lizzy, again, on behalf of Oregon BHA, I want to thank you for spending your evening with us. And I want to thank everybody who was in attendance tonight. Just so everyone's aware, the Oregon chapter, along with some partner organizations, are going through this document with a fine-tooth comb, and we will be submitting comments. We would encourage everybody else to do the same and spread the word. We think this is a transformational opportunity for especially hunters on this forest. And so we want to encourage everybody to get engaged and participate. So want to thank you again, Lizzy, and thank you everyone else for attending. This webinar will be posted on the Oregon BHA YouTube channel. If you missed any parts of tonight's conversation, or if you want to forward that on to any of your friends that missed out. Thanks for coming and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Lizzy.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Have a wonderful night.
You too.